Book review: Conclave by Robert Harris. Robert Harris's Conclave is the taut cerebral thriller that delves into the sacred and secretive world of Vatican politics. Set over 72 hours, the novel portrays the election of a new pope following the sudden death of a beloved pontiff. With elegance, precision, and restrained drama, Harris transforms an opaque ritual into an absorbing psychological and political narrative. This review will explore specific aspects of the novel, its setting and atmospheric characterization, particularly of Cardinal Lomeli, themes of faith and power, the structure and pacing of the plot, and Harris's prose style. Plot summary: Conclave is a gripping political thriller set within the secretive world of the Vatican, written by acclaimed British author Robert Harris. The novel explores the intense and intricate process of selecting a new pope following the unexpected death of a charismatic, reform-minded pontiff. The entire narrative unfolds over just 72 hours, largely confined within the walls of the Sistine Chapel in the Santa Marta residence, where 118 cardinals from around the world gather to vote in one of the most mysterious and tradition-laden rituals on earth. The Papal Conclave. At the center of the novel is Cardinal Jacopo Lomeli, the dean of the College of Cardinals, devout and conscientious man who is suddenly thrust into the spotlight as the person responsible for overseeing the conclave. As the novel opens, Lomeli is still reeling from the Pope's death, but he must immediately order and preside over the election process with little time to grieve. Yes. Dean Lomeli must maintain neutrality and ensure that the rules are followed, but he is also plagued by personal doubts about his own suitability for higher office and his desire for spiritual purity, and a church he fears has become too political. As the cardinals arrive in Rome, early alliances and rivalries begin to surface. Several prominent candidates emerge as papabili, men considered likely to become the next pope: a monomarchar, Tedesco, hardline traditionalist from Italy; Cardinal Tremblay, politically savvy Canadian with backing from the Vatican bureaucracy; and Cardinal Adami, charismatic African cardinal who represents the growing power of the Church in the global South. Despite the surface rituals and solemnity, the conclave is deeply political, with cardinals campaigning subtly and sometimes not so subtly for support, leaking damaging information about rivals, and exploiting global tensions within the Church. Lomeli quickly discovers that the previous pope may have left behind secrets that could influence the outcome of the vote, and perhaps tarnish the Church's image. Mysterious sealed letter from the late pontiff. Lomeli, before his death, sets off chain of doubts and investigations that threaten to derail the already tense proceedings. One of the most disruptive elements is the unexpected arrival of 119th Cardinal Vincent Benitez, Filipino cardinal who was created in Pector in secret by the late pope. His presence shocks the College of Cardinals, and his backstory is cloaked in mystery. Benitez is soft-spoken and deeply humble, but presence unsettles many and raises uncomfortable questions about why the late pope chose to keep his existence confidential. As Lomeli gets to know Benitez, he begins to question everything he knows about power, humility, and what makes a true leader. As the voting rounds continue and no clear victor emerges, tensions rise. Each failed ballot increases the pressure and fuels desperate maneuvers behind the scenes. Lomeli, meanwhile, finds himself drawn into a personal crisis of faith, questioning not only the motivations of his fellow cardinals, but also the institutional structures of the Church itself. He uncovers several disturbing truths about the leading candidates: scandals involving ambition, abuse, financial impropriety, and moral compromise, forcing him whether to reveal these secrets and risk destabilizing the conclave, or to remain silent and allow flawed men to ascend to the papacy. Ultimately, in dramatic and unexpected conclusion, Lomeli takes an unprecedented step. Trusting his conscience over political expedience, he chooses to reveal the information in the sealed letter and discloses what he has learned during his private inquiries. This act of moral courage disrupts the power plays of the other cardinals and shifts the momentum of the conclave. The final twist comes with the election of Cardinal Benitez. The cardinals, moved by his humility, spirituality, and the sense of divine providence surrounding his presence, vote for him in nearly unanimous final ballot. Lomeli, now at peace with his decision, recognizes Benitez leader who may truly restore faith and integrity to the Church. But the novel ends on subtly ambiguous note, leaving readers to ponder whether any institution can ever truly be free of politics, and whether holiness can thrive in structure built on centuries of power and secrecy. Setting and atmosphere. The setting of Conclave is as much the character as any cardinal. The story takes place almost entirely within the confines of the Vatican, more specifically the Sistine Chapel and the Casa Santa Marta, the hotel-like residence where cardinals live during the conclave. Harris masterfully recreates the enclosed, cloistered environment of the election process. The reader feels the physical weight of the marble halls, the intimidating grandeur Michelangelo's frescoes and the oppressive solemnity of tradition. Through these details, Harris builds an atmosphere that is both reverent and claustrophobic, befitting a story that grapples with questions of sin, sanctity, and secrecy. There is a palpable tension to the setting that serves to heighten the novel's suspense. The decision to limit the action to such a closed world emphasizes the psychological pressure on the characters, the lack of modern technology, the isolation from the outside world, and the formalized structure of the conclave rituals all reinforce the sense of being transported into an ancient, rule-bound realm where human frailties are laid bare. Characterization. Cardinal Lomeli, Cardinal Jacopo Lomeli, the Dean of the College of Cardinals, is the novel's protagonist and moral center. A man of deep faith and introspection, Lomeli is not a politician by instinct, but a seeker of truth and spiritual purity. His internal struggles form the emotional core of the narrative, torn between the need to maintain institutional order and his own growing doubts about the integrity of his peers. Becomes both investigator and confessor. Harris renders Lomeli with subtlety and depth. He is not a conventional hero. He is cautious, uncertain, and sometimes painfully slow to act. Yet these very qualities underscore the realism of his character. Lomeli's humility, intellectual honesty, and reluctance to claim power for himself make him a compelling figure. His moral dilemmas, particularly concerning the secrets he uncovers about the leading papal candidates, are explored with nuance and complexity. What is particularly striking is Lomeli's spiritual journey. As he navigates the murky waters of ambition and ecclesiastical politics, he confronts his own crises. Faith not just in God, but in the institution he has served for decades. His ultimate decisions are not framed as victories, but as acts of conscience that may carry heavy costs. Themes: faith, power, and integrity. At the heart of Conclave lies the tension between the sacred and the political. Harris examines how the deeply spiritual institution like the Catholic Church can be entangled in worldly ambition, manipulation, and secrecy. The novel poses uncomfortable questions. Can true holiness exist within a system that rewards ambition? Is the process of choosing a pope truly guided by divine inspiration, or is it subject to the same power games as any political election? The novel does not offer easy answers. Instead, it dramatizes the internal conflict faced by believers when institutional power appears to diverge from spiritual ideals. Cardinal Lomeli becomes the vessel for these questions as he grapples with them. Implications of the secrets he uncovers. His final act, disclosing information that alters the outcome of the conclave, is portrayed as an attempt to align the outcome with his conscience and faith rather than expediency. Another important theme is the notion of secrecy, both personal and institutional. From hidden pasts and private scandals to the revelation of cardinal appointed Hector, Harris shows how the Church's commitment to secrecy can both protect endanger its mission. The idea that Pope could make an undisclosed appointment that shocks the College of Cardinals points to the opaque nature of ecclesiastical authority. Plot structure and pacing. The structure of Conclave is tightly controlled. Divided into clear sections that mirror the stages of the voting process, the novel moves with the same methodical rhythm as the conclave itself. This deliberate pacing allows Harris to build suspense without resorting to melodrama. Every vote, every whispered conversation, every revelation inches the story closer to its climax. The tension builds gradually but inexorably as Lomeli's discoveries begin to influence his decisions and his view of his fellow cardinals. The arrival of Cardinal Vincent Benitez, late edition, whose existence had been kept secret by the previous pope, injects dose of mystery and surprise. His presence not only disrupts the expected voting blocks, also forces Lomeli to confront broader, more inclusive vision of the Church. Harris's control over the plot is such that even when the ultimate choice of pope seems clear, the novel retains an air of unpredictability. The final twist, the election of Benitez and the nature of his backstory, that's poignant and provocative note that leaves readers contemplating the implications long after the final page. Prose style. Robert Harris writes with clarity, elegance, and restraint. His prose is never showy, but it is always precise. He renders complex theological and institutional concepts accessible to general readers without diluting their significance. Descriptions are evocative without being overdone. Dialogue is natural and revealing. A notable strength of Harris's style is his ability to convey internal conflict through action and gesture as much as through introspection. Lomeli's hesitations, his quiet prayers, his subtle shifts in perspective, all are rendered with deft touch. Harris avoids overt moralizing, allowing the events and characters to speak for themselves. The novel's tone is appropriately solemn but never ponderous. Even in scenes heavy with ritual and tradition, Harris finds moments of human vulnerability and political cunning. This balance between reverence and realism is key to the novel's success. Conclusion Conclave is a triumph of quiet tension, moral inquiry, and narrative control by focusing on the intricacies of a highly specific, rarely glimpsed world. Robert Harris opens the window onto universal concerns, the struggle between conscience and duty, the corrupting potential of power, and the elusive nature of truth. Through the figure of Cardinal Lomeli, Harris has created one of his most humane and introspective protagonists in a heroine world where silence often speaks louder than words. For readers drawn to political thrillers, ecclesiastical history, or philosophical explorations of leadership and integrity, Conclave offers richly rewarding experience. It is a novel that respects the intelligence of its readers and one that lingers in the mind, prompting reflection on the sacred and the profane, the human and the divine.